Hi, good evening, everyone. It's so wonderful to be here to join our Temple Jeremiah community with the county commissioner and with the Simon Wiesenthal Center, and to be able to do this important learning and work to make this world a better place. And one of the best ways to do that is knowing what world we have right now. Here at Temple Jeremiah, it has been part of our mission for more than 60 years to do those acts that in Hebrew we call tikkun olam, acts of repairing the world. And we know that that repair is ongoing, and each of us has that distinct responsibility and privilege. So it really is a privilege to be one of the rabbis here, to be a part of this community, and to be able to welcome all of you into our space, and especially to be able to welcome Commissioner Britton into this space to help us learn how to do that work a little bit better. Please.
Thank you, Rabbi. As I mentioned to the rabbi, I thought she might execute a note for me since I'm missing Holy Thursday services, but I feel like we're also doing the Lord's work here all together. So first off, we'll start with our first slide. And thank you to my staff who are here for making me always look good, which I appreciate. So thanks to all of you, and particularly thanks to who has been, I think, our primary partner in the work we're doing on Cook County United Against Hate, the Simon Wiesenthal Center. They have been incredibly open and partnering with us in all the things that we do. And of course, this event is sponsored by, and now an official branch of the Cook County government, Cook County United Against Hate, which is really an initiative to inspire all of us to find ways to reject racism, bigotry, discrimination, and all the ugly faces of our common humanity. Unfortunately, there's a lot of those, and we're dealing with them every single day. And our tagline is a simple one: hate against one is hate against all. But I can tell you that the work has been difficult. It has become more difficult after October 7th. But we continue to work, and we continue to strive to reject all forms of hate throughout our county, and I hope throughout our world. You can go to the next slide. Unfortunately, and I can tell you that these numbers really only go up to about 2020. I can tell you things are worse than they were. Despite all of our concerted efforts, with all of our partner groups, including in the Hispanic community, the LGBTQ plus community, in the Islamic community, and of course in the Jewish community, and in all of our faith partnerships, there has been a significant increase in hate crimes across the United States. Racial hate crimes, anti-black crimes still remain the largest that exist, and sometimes I think we maybe forget about that we are not past that in our world, but also anti-Semitic, anti-Hispanic, homophobic, anti-Native American, anti-Asian, anti-Muslim crimes have increased substantially throughout the United States, and I've seen only preliminary numbers since October of last year as to both anti-Semitic incidents and Islamic anti-Palestinian incidents. They have been much more significant and much worse over the last few months. You go to the next slide. As I've often said, there was a time, and I'm old enough to remember that this type of vitriol and hate seemed to be stuff that was discussed in back alleys or in basements. People didn't say it as out loud as they do now, and it would thrive in the shadows. It is now much more prevalent and much more open than I think it has ever been in many ways, and that's why we're here to shine a light on those things, to bring it out into the sun, and to reject all the forms of hate, discrimination, and racism that we see too often in our world. Cook County United Against Hate, quite simply, is a coalition that's designed to publicly denounce hate through resolutions, symbolic displays, inspiring conversations. And one thing that I think is most interesting to me is the conversations that we've had about finding out ways in which we can address racism and hate directly in our communities, in our own families, with our friends, in our places of worship, in every aspect of our lives that are significant to bringing out the better parts of our human nature and not the worst. And that's why we've had such a tremendous outpouring, and it has heartened me in seeing that this happens, because it's incredibly important that all of us do this together because there are so many more of us than there are of them. And empowering individuals by taking the pledge, which you can do online if you haven't already done so. I urge you to do so at cookcountyunitedagainst-hate.com. It is a small but I think significant part of all of us working together to strive in a way that will be inclusive and celebrates our diversity, which I think is one of the greatest parts of being in this country. You can go to the next slide. So I have tried throughout my now almost 23 years as a public official to strive for equity and inclusion in everything I do. But I can tell you that it was sobering in March of 2022 when I was going out to get my Sunday paper, as I often do, and there was a bag laying on my driveway filled with rice, which I've now learned is there to keep it from blowing away. And inside were some awful anti-Semitic pieces of paper referencing the Biden administration, the war in Ukraine, all of which were supposedly caused by the Jewish conspiracy. And I was standing there thinking that it's disturbing to have a neo-Nazi in your driveway, one, and also thinking about what my friends and neighbors who are Jewish would be thinking about getting this at their homes, because it was bad enough for me, and I'm Catholic. So I decided I thought we needed to do something. My partners at Simon Wiesenthal agreed with me that it is best to call this stuff out, not to simply ignore it. And so we started Cook County United Against Hate as a response to what was then a single incident of anti-Semitic hate, but now we obviously address to all forms of hate throughout our county. And so we had an initial rally in Glenview, and then we continued with the passing of a resolution in the Cook County Board of Commissioners in November of 2023, and then declaring United Against Hate Week, which we did in combination with a group in California in November of 2023. And we have, as you can see, we've been busy. We all have full-time jobs. I personally have two. So we do what we can to try to do activation events to show people where we can go and how they can get the tools that they need to combat hate in everything they do. The most recent thing I just did was with a few of the other commissioners, and again, it's always, I think, heartening to see how our local governments, our local police departments, our local faith communities get together and work on this. You can go to slide 5. So now we're up to over 60 coalition partners. That includes pretty much, I think, everybody in my district. We have 24 municipalities in Cook County's 14th district. We have many faith partners, not-for-profits, and businesses who have signed on as our coalition partners. Again, it shows the universality of our willingness to stand with each other in the face of this horrible type of hate. You can go to the next slide. So again, I invite you to stay in touch with us. You can do that by signing the pledge, signing up online. We will then provide you with regular newsletters. Is it quarterly now, or are we monthly? It shows you there's way too much hate. Anyway, it's every month you'll get a newsletter from us, just kind of giving you an update as to what we're doing and things that we're having, like this event where you can attend if you'd like. We also do these things streaming so that people can watch it from home. So now it is now my honor to introduce Rick Eaton, who's the Director of Research for the Simon Wiesenthal Center. Rick's work on digital hate, particularly the digital hate report card, just reminds us again that people who focus on hate use many different means to recruit new members. As I've often said, there is grooming going on in this country, but it's grooming by white supremacists for people online, and particularly for children in gaming platforms and social media. It is something that we need to be aware of and we need to fight against. And through Cook County United Against Hate, we're committed to fighting against those injustices perpetrated both online and through education, targeted investment, prosecution, and legislation. We will make sure we can do everything we can to make sure they don't make the inroads that they're trying to. If you have any questions that arise during Rick's presentation, please write them down on note cards that Barb has in the back. And we will do a Q&A session after the presentation. And without any further ado, I'd like to welcome, and please join me in welcoming Rick Eaton.
I'm going to do it this way, if that's all right. Thank you, Commissioner. It's always a pleasure to collaborate with you, and and your people, it's been a great collaboration, and we hope this continues for years to come. Let me just make sure I know how this works. Red button, okay. So let me say something ahead of time. Let me warn you that you're going to see a lot of offensive material. I apologize, but this is what I do all day, my researchers do all day, and unfortunately, this is what we see out there online, and it can be offensive. I apologize ahead of time, but I want you to think about something. The Commissioner, you said something very important, is that there's more of us than there are them. So we see a lot of this material out there. There are people that see it. There are people that buy into it. But not everybody hates Jews or Asians or African Americans or Muslims. There's a lot more of us there are them. But we do, it looks like a lot when you see it all at once. So we do an annual report called Digital Terrorism and Hate. We released it with the Commissioner and others here last year. We do an annual release. We'll be updating it shortly. I just want to mention that we also have Allison Pierce-Slovan, our Midwest Director. The Simon Wiesenthal Center is here in the back. Some of you know her, but she's responsible for all the local activities and things like that here. So we do this report, and I want to show you something. This is, the Commissioner mentioned our report card. We do a report card based on many of the social media companies. They change from time to time depending on what they are. Now, if you look up at the top, you see this is our last year's report card. The new one will be coming out in just a few weeks. But you get a sense here. You see the major companies: Facebook, Instagram, Google, YouTube, TikTok, Twitter. You're familiar with those. Telegram is one of the worst sites on the internet. I'm going to talk about that in a minute. And one you may not even have heard of called VK.com, which is a Russian version of Facebook, but yet it's the number 20 traffic site in the world. And because of that, people who get kicked off of sites like Facebook and Instagram, they put their pages up on other sites like VK.com. And then you see we have different networking sites. We have alternative video sites besides YouTube, because people that get taken off of YouTube, they look for alternative sites, so there are a lot of new ones like that. I just want to say something about the grades. A lot of people say, well, you know, Facebook is terrible. They allow this, they allow that. Facebook has something between 2.5 and 3 billion users. A lot of material makes it on Facebook, but they get a better grade than some because they actually take hate seriously. They don't want it on the platform. They have rules about it. They revise their rules all the time. And yes, we find offensive material, but they generally deal with it, and when they're notified of it, they definitely take it off. You see the others up there. Just let me talk about Twitter for a minute, because at one time, especially at ISIS peak, Twitter was terrible. ISIS was posting thousands of messages a daily, and hate groups were doing it. They cleaned up Twitter completely. And then after it was purchased, it's gone now back downhill, unfortunately. So look at these images up here. Can anybody tell me what ties all these different images together? Anybody have a guess? All these images here, they are created with AI. They are created we're now getting hate images that someone can just tell a computer, I'd like a hate image targeting Jews, targeting immigrants, things like that, and they can be generated online. This is the world we now live in, unfortunately. And you see in the center there, you see the cue balls, 1488. That is actually the white supremacist mantra, the 14 words combined with 88. The 14 words being We must secure the existence of our people and a future for white children, 88 being the 8th letter of the alphabet, or Heil Hitler. Very popular, common mantra among white supremacists, Nazis, etc. So this is actually a Telegram site that is, all it is these type of images, AI images. Telegram, as I mentioned, many of you probably haven't even seen it. It's absolutely one of the worst sites online. It is based in the UAE, and they allow just about everything. Unlike Facebook and Google and others, there's no policy department, there's nobody to talk to, and we find white supremacists, Nazis, terrorists, you name it. I'll show you some. These are all different feeds that you find on Telegram. So you have eco-fascists, and you have far left, and you have the Party Services is a site which offers doxing, or exposing people, exposing their identities, targeting people, swatting, things like that. You have QAnon and others. Telegram has it all, and in huge quantities. And the one in the center, the black one, is our White Lives Matter network. I'll be talking about that a little more in a minute. This is a local site, Arischer Krieg, or Aryan War. And the image on the left, on the right, I wanted to show you because this is essentially how Telegram works. You see the different feeds, and you see the ones I subscribe to are pretty radical, obviously. From QAnon, Aryan sites, Arischer Krieg here, Goyim TV, the people that put out the flyers that Commissioner Britton and others got. On the right is that when you're logged into one of those, you can see that's their feed, and they have different messages. They can post images. Many of those are hyperlinks, so you see something you like, you click on it, it takes you to another post. It's a very simple site for users interface, and also for those who are posting, and that's what makes it so important, because so many people can easily get on it, post their material, and the like. And it's absolutely the worst site, period, online. This is one that's from Epic Danger, is from Telegram, and you see on the right there some of the symbols that we see that you might obviously recognize the swastika, but you might not recognize the symbol in the back. It's a variation of the sun wheel. It's used by Nazis and extremists, especially in places where they can't post swastikas, or the use of the skull mask, which is another extremist thing. You'll see some of the extremist rallies and marches, people will be wearing skull masks. TikTok is the second worst site online by far, and as far as the U.S. is concerned, as far as young people are concerned, it's absolutely the worst, because what makes it bad is the algorithms which will lead people to the content. And in this case, you've got a little smattering of everything. You've got explosives material. You've got anti-Semitic material with the black one that says 10 things Jews do to destroy white people. You've got a video targeting the LGBT community. You've got other white supremacists, fascists, the CEO of the Bowl Cut. That's using popular with TikTok is using avatars of people like Dylan Roof, the shooter in South Carolina that killed 10 people at the AME Church in Charleston, South Carolina some years ago. So you have people that laud these people, that use their images as avatars and so forth, and it gets even worse. This is Elliot Rodger. He is what we call an incel, or involuntary celibate, a young person who blames all their problems on women because they can't get a date and can't have any relationships and so forth. Elliot Rodger was one of these incels. He killed 6 people up at the University of California, Santa Barbara some years ago. The one on the left there, unfortunately, this is a a user that is using the image of the Columbine shooters, Eric Harris and Dylan Klebold. And we see that constantly. And don't let me confuse it. They will take these profiles off when they find them, when they're notified of them. Unfortunately, they recycle faster than they can take them all off. On the right, you see Brenton Tarrant, who was the Christchurch mosque shooter from 5 years ago, killed 51 Muslims at 2 mosques in New Zealand. This is just an anniversary thing. That mosque shooting was 5 years ago. A couple weeks ago, people are congratulating him and happy anniversary, how wonderful your job you did. This is interesting because it is a song that is literally about school shootings. The author says that it was written to be against school shootings, but unfortunately, some people consider it a positive thing. And in fact, based on this song, you see, we found a conversation on another site called Discord, which is a gaming site, and 2 guys are discussing, and the guy at the top there, Tobler, says, "Does anybody have plans for a school?" And the next guy says, "Well, what kind of plans?" And he says, "What Eric and Dylan did, what the Columbine shooters did." And they go on and talk about how this would go down and the fact that it would be on the same day, April 20th, or Hitler's birthday. Fortunately, this didn't come about, but he also mentions TikTok, and one of the reasons being TikTok has this interesting feature where you can find out what soundtracks are used on people's videos. The Pumped Up Kicks, this song is used literally tens of thousands of times. Now, that doesn't mean that every one of those videos means that it's somebody who's promoting school shootings, but unfortunately, there are people that as I say, they use their advertisers, they laud their activities, and so forth. So some of those probably are. Some of the active groups right now in this country, I just go through a few of them. One is called the Patriot Front. This is a group who's held a number of rallies around the Midwest here. They had a big march in Washington, D.C. around the Washington Monument. They usually all wear the same khakis and shirts, and in many cases cover their faces. A couple of years ago, they were here ostensibly to disrupt the Gay Pride Parade here in Chicago. But they're very active. They changed their name from Vanguard America, which was the group that was involved in the Charlottesville rally back in 2017. It was one of their members who drove the car through the crowd that killed one of the counter-protesters, Heather Heyer. Patriot Front is one. White Lives Matter is a very active group. You see them very heavily on Telegram. They do a lot of stickering in different places, on telephone poles and light poles and things like that. But what's interesting about them is you go to their Telegram feeds, they will talk about these different activities and protests that they've done. But then you look at their manual and you go deep into their manual and you see a little bit more about what they're about, that they want to accomplish their goals by any means necessary, ensure the physical, cultural, and spiritual continuation of our people in all the countries and continents that we have built. In other words, blatant white supremacy. And stating by any means necessary, unfortunately, is a phrase that you'll hear again tonight. Also, White Lives Matter has Illinois branches, and on Telegram, you can have things like this. This is 2 different Illinois chat sessions that are on Telegram, so they will have their own feed that they post links and things like that, but then they'll have a separate chat channel where interested members can get together and talk to like-minded people. One of the newest things out there is something that we call active clubs. Did anybody happen to see last week's episode of Law and Order? It talked about guys that were working out and building up and so forth. this is basically what active clubs are. They are fight clubs with a white nationalist philosophy. And it was interesting that they did this episode on Law and Order last week, and some people say, well, somebody's got an active mind. No, this is actual things going on, not only all over this country, all over the world. And a lot of them, they will all use the same logo up there. Anybody know what that symbol is up there, if you take out the palm trees? It's called the Celtic Cross. It's not exclusively a white supremacy symbol. You will see it on graves in places, in Arlington and other places. You see it on Catholic churches. But when it's used in this context, if you see it in a tattoo and so forth, it's generally a white supremacist because it's a very popular white supremacist symbol. So yes, you have active clubs right here in Illinois and right in the Chicago area. Windy City Nationalists is a nationalist group, but they're also one of these fight clubs or active clubs. Same thing with this Riverland, which is kind of a larger area in Missouri and Illinois. These are the flyers that Commissioner Britton mentioned earlier on. They had some, what was interesting, these have been distributed around the country. They usually use the same rhetoric. They have like a dozen different ones that say, you know, everything COVID is Jewish, everything Disney is Jewish, everything LGBTQ is Jewish. What was interesting about the ones that were distributed here in the northern suburbs of Chicago were that somebody took this same rhetoric, used the same language, the same concept, but they very much personalized them. They made about local Illinois politics, about law enforcement, what Jews are in law enforcement here. They targeted a couple of medical centers, something that somebody probably had a beef with a medical center about their treatment, their family's treatment, and they made these very personal to your area. It's one of the few places we've seen this happen, is right here in this area here. But these guys used to be based in California. They've, luckily for us, moved to Florida, but they're very active. They put this stuff online in their Telegram feeds. People can download it, print it out, and do as the commissioner mentioned. You see one of the baggies there with rice and the flyer, and they'll throw them on lawns or driveways or things like that. They're very careful not to do anything illegal, like put it in a mailbox or something like that, which is a crime. This is another group which has kind of hooked up in recent years with the Goyim Defense League, the people that put out those flyers. This one's called Blood Tribe, and you see right on their shirts, this is a rally, joint rally that they did with Goyim Defense League, that previous group, and you see they've got the death's head, the Totenkopf, which was used by the SS soldiers on their uniforms, and right with GDL on it. So it's kind of this joint agreement between the two groups. And this is their leader up on the top right there, Christopher Pohlhaus. He is a former Marine, a tattoo artist, and very unlikable guy, obviously. So I made this similar presentation just to your local terrorism organization here in Chicago, on Tuesday. And it had a lot of federal law enforcement people. And one of the things they had asked me about, one of the things that they had asked me about was talk about gaming a little bit. And gaming has become a big recruiting area for extremism, mainly because when these sites, when people get kicked off of the sites like Facebook and Instagram and so forth, they look for other places to do their recruiting, and one of those is through gaming. Now, this game is not one of them. This is just an offensive game that somebody came up with because of all the activity that we saw in 2020 and the Black Lives Matter movement and so forth. So they just repurposed it for this. But there are games out there that are interactive that people can communicate with. And those of you here that have children or grandchildren, you ask them if they're familiar with Roblox, they'll tell you they are. This is one of the most popular, what they call constructor games out there. Unfortunately, we see people making recreations of different things that kids would not know anything about, because this game was designed for like 8 to 12-year-olds, essentially. They have made recreations of mass shootings, such as Waco. I mean, how many people still remember the Waco shooting? Most of us in this room, because we saw it. But young people, they're really not going to know that much about it, and yet somebody makes a recreation of Waco. Somebody made a recreation of the Christchurch Mosque shooting on Roblox. Now, again, I will tell you, we work closely with Roblox. We have meetings with them regularly. They will take off material like this, but again, people keep recycling it and putting back up. For example, a lot of these companies, they're so good when you can upload symbols and things like that into Roblox, but you can't upload a swastika because they have it blocked. Unfortunately, what you can do is upload the pieces for the swastika and put it together within the game. So they figure out ways around this stuff. Now, a lot of this leads to, I talked about the Christchurch shooting a couple of times. This leads to something which you may have seen in 2017 with the Charlottesville Unite the Right rally, where they were, the night before the main rally, they walked through the campus of the University of Virginia chanting, "You will not replace us, Jews will not replace us, one people, one nation, end immigration, and blood and soil." The last two, one people, one nation, one end immigration, is interesting because it's a play on the German phrase that they used during the Nazi era, which is one land, one people, one Führer. Blood and soil is actually a term that goes back to the 1890s in Germany, but was also used by the swastikas, kind of the people's ties to the land and so forth. Obviously, the two up at front, you will not replace us, Jews will not replace us. This is a philosophy that has come to be known, the Great Replacement Theory. And what it says essentially is that there is an orchestrated plan to essentially eliminate white people by immigration, breeding, and so forth. And who orchestrated this plan is the Jews. And this particular one, this is another one of these AI images. And it's this crazy-looking Orthodox guy with all the immigrants and so forth on the boats behind him, created with AI. So this is serious because this philosophy was promoted by Anders Breivik, who committed shootings in Norway about 10, 12 years ago, by Brenton Tarrant, who did the mass shootings in New Zealand. It's promoting this idea of the Great Replacement. And in fact, one of the popular images of Brenton Tarrant is this one here that was put on VK.com with his manifesto, The Great Replacement. So unfortunately, this is a lot of nationalists, white supremacists, and so forth believe in this concept, and the fight clubs essentially are getting themselves ready by building themselves up and so forth to combat this Great Replacement. It all kind of ties together. So the last serious one, I want to talk to you about a philosophy called accelerationist. This is one that we have done a lot of work in the area here, talking to law enforcement, to all the local agencies and so forth, because this is one of the most radical. This is accelerationists buy into a book by a neo-Nazi by the name of James Mason called Siege, which essentially is that phrase I mentioned before, accomplish your goals by any means necessary. And that means, you know, murder, arson, you name it, do it. Basically so that you can tear down society and rebuild it with a white supremacist lens. These guys, the accelerationists, put out these publications online, very serious, talking about targeting infrastructure and so forth. And in fact, They've put out a whole handful. They've said they had some upcoming ones, but as of yet, we haven't seen those. But possibly because these three people here who were arrested, the two on the right, Brandon Russell and Sarah Clendaniel, were arrested planning to essentially shut down the city of Baltimore by attacking their whole power grid. And it's possible, it hasn't been tied together yet, that they were responsible for some of the power station attacks in North Carolina not long before that, where there were a number of stations attacked. So as in their publications that I showed you, and they talk about targeting infrastructure. The girl on the left, Dallas Humber, was kind of the supposedly known as the narrator of the accelerationist movement, and she was arrested about the same time. That's her, that she did this image of herself on the left, dressed like Brenton Tarrant was dressed at the shootings in Christchurch, with the vest and the weapon that's got all the different writing on it for all the things that they're fighting for, and then the sun wheel on the vest in the center. So one of the things that we see is a lot of mainstream sites now being compromised, and this is something that we've dealt with over the years, as long as I've been doing this work, which is 38 years, is denying the Holocaust. And this particular video, which was advertised on Telegram, called The Last Battle, Europa, The Last Battle, is essentially tries to rewrite history, not the first one that done that. What's interesting now is that somebody took that and they put a review on IMDb, the very mainstream site where you can look up movies and TV shows and see who the actors were and what episodes they had and so forth. They put a complimentary review of this revisionist movie on IMDb. And unfortunately, we see this on many similar types of sites, mainstream sites as well. You know, we expect it on Telegram, not so much on IMDb. This is an image that was posted on Twitter. This account is still on Twitter today, or it was last week, the last time I looked, with this very common anti-Semitic image of a Jew. One of it's kind of commonly known as the Jewish merchant, and its variations of this show up all over social media literally every day. Spotify. Spotify is basically a place where you can build a playlist, listen to other people's playlists, things like that. So why would Spotify be bad? Because the way people title their playlists, Mocking Anne Frank, Auschwitz Shower Party, and believe me, there are playlists that target African Americans, that target Asians, that target the LGBTQ community, and there's a lot of them. It's not like like there are one or two. This one I just threw in because this is kind of an interesting one. For the last 10 years or so, one of these sites, including VK.com, has held a contest called the Miss Hitler Contest. Well, this last year, they had, in 2023, they had 3 candidates for Miss Hitler, and you see the Miss Aryan Angel, Miss Schwarzsonne, and Miss Poisoner. Well, a newspaper in the UK, since they saw the UK flag on Miss Aryan Angel there, they said, well, can you guys find out who this is? Well, it turns out that that wasn't all that difficult, and 3 of us working together on Zoom in about an hour and a half were able to go to the sites and do some things with searches and all open source information, and we identified the fact that Miss Aryan Angel, who's had other profiles and with different names and things like that, some offensive, and was a member of a British nationalist group. Turns out that she's actually Sarah Mountford from Oxford, England, 42-year-old mother of 3. So we were able, in the space of an hour, to use the tools that we have online to find out who she was. I actually, in LA, at least once a month with an organization that brings people in. We've had law enforcement agencies right here in the area that have asked us to do anti-Semitism classes to explain to their people what exactly it is, where it comes from. But this is a very stark reminder, because this is the most recent figures that we have from the FBI on hate crime statistics, and you see on the left all the other religions and you know, anti-Hindu, anti-Buddhist, Sikh, etc. And on the right, you see over 50% is anti-Semitic hate crimes and anti-Semitic incidents, and that's a major concern. So, and they just in 2021, they were up over 20% over 2020. So, and unfortunately, hate crime statistics are notoriously bad and wrong. All you can do is tell trends from them, because so many of these crimes, just as they do with other communities, go unreported. So this is an interesting post we found just recently about the kind of thing that we see out there. Somebody putting up a fake dictionary word with with a definition that, you know, Israel just use that. It means taking something that isn't yours and shamelessly pretending that it belongs to you while playing the victim. So it's not all terrible. There's some good things out there, some good things that we do. One of those things that we do is that we have a workshop in schools that we call Combat Hate. We've been doing it quite a bit in New York. We've reached, last school year, we reached 20,000 students in New York, and this year we're on track to do 22,000. We now have started to roll this out here in the Chicago area, and we do have money to complete this program. We go into a classroom, we talk to kids about the perils of social media. We start by just asking them, what do you like about social media? Which ones do you use? And then we get into, well, what don't you like about social media? How often do you see uncomfortable material and things on social media? And then we break them up into groups, and we show them some very, very mild examples of social media hate. We get them to look at them, talk to their friends, whoever got the same one in the classroom. Then we put them on the screen. We talk to the whole class about them. And then we're able to find out what they're thinking. We're able to talk about some of these issues. One of the examples is anti-Semitism. One of them is funny racist jokes without the punchlines. One is anti-LGBTQ. We have an Asian example, a Hispanic example, an African American example. So we'll use different ones in different places. But then we talk to kids about, well, you know, hate has consequences. Minor stuff like social media can lead to other things, and show some examples of that. And then we talk to them about their digital footprint, what they need to know so that they don't post things that could come back on them 5 years later when they're trying to get a job or get into college. And then we give them some resources to talk about. We do all this in the space of a one class period, one classroom, and it's been very successful. We've gotten great feedback from some of the schools that we've done here, some of the ones that we've done in New York, and we're looking seriously to expand this here, but it's really a very positive program, and the kids really respond to it because we do it in an interactive fashion where they're doing most of the talking, if at all possible. The other thing that we do positive is we have one of the foremost, actually the foremost former white supremacist who was a leader in the neo-Nazi movement for 25 years. And 5 years ago, he posted a website and said, I'm getting out of the movement. I was the first one to say, we need to talk to this guy. Within a few days of his posting that website, I flew to Detroit and met with this guy, Jeff Scoop. He has been an incredible resource. I can't tell you how dedicated to the mission that he is. We take him to schools. We've taken him to law enforcement people. We've met with anybody who is interested in this subject, anybody that we can help, especially law enforcement doing their jobs about this stuff. And Jeff is an incredible resource. He's not exactly the guy you'd think would renounce the movement, but he has his personal reasons for doing so, and they're very powerful. And he's very good at spreading the message of positivity. And he talks about the people who helped him get to this point, because these days, now that he's out of the movement, most of his friends, his best friends, are an African-American man by the name of Daryl Davis, a Muslim filmmaker by the name of Dia Khan, and a handful of Jews. That's the people that he associates with these days. And he's a great speaker. He knows how to respond to the questions, and as I say, we take him to schools. He's been to synagogues here in the area and others as well, and we're always looking to expand that program as well. So there is some positive stuff, even in what I do every day. So we put out this report called Digital Terror and Hate. You can get it at digitalhate.net as a website. You can also get it as an app. It's all self-contained. If you go to that website, you go to the app. It's not going to take you out on the internet, take you to any sites. It's all self-contained. It has not only descriptions, but also has other material from sites if we think it's important to show. We like to spread this. We give it to law enforcement, the people who do our programs in the Museum of Tolerance in Los Angeles, and others as well. But it's open to everyone, and it has a lot of the background material here. It's not a typical report. It's interactive. It actually shows you the sites, just like I've done up here tonight. That's what it looks like. You've got different categories, subcategories, and then the final entries on the right there. And then we have another resource, some of the resources on our page at SWC Reports, which we write reports on different subjects and symbols and platforms and things like that, and all that's available on our website. And that's all I've got for you at the moment. I know it's very harsh. I apologize, but if you have questions, I guess they're going to distribute some cards, and we'll be happy to take your questions.
So we can start with, first question is, how is white defined by the U.S. hate groups and white supremacists? I mean, how do they know someone is white in their definition of white?
How is someone defined white? I have to laugh at that question because over the years it's kind of whoever they kind of deem is part of their group. It's generally, I mean, obviously it's generally somebody's non-Hispanic that, as far as they can tell, has no minority blood in them, but it's not like they do a test. What's interesting, though, over the years we've had people get associated with a movement who some in the movement would not call white and some would. I have to tell you a story about that because there was a group called Aryan Nations, the most prominent group in the country for years, and I got an invitation to a meeting about an amendment to make only white people citizens of this country. So I went to the meeting, and there was an Armenian guy there who said, I'm Armenian, but I'm a member of Aryan Nations, and I work hard for this country and so forth. But the guy giving this presentation said, but you couldn't be a citizen because you're not white. Well, I called up the leader of this organization in Idaho just to have some fun, and he went through this whole rigmarole about how who Armenians are descended from and so forth. And in the bottom line, he said, "Yeah, but he can be counted as white." So it's in most cases it's obvious, but you never know for sure. They'll whoever they deem as one of their supporters.
The next question is kind of about what like temples like this can do to check their internet vulnerabilities to potential hacking or doxing or whatever might happen with people who may be targeted through houses of worship.
Right. I am not a cybersecurity expert by any means, and what I would say in that regard is that it's like the government says, see something, say something. If you see anything that mentions a synagogue, mentions your local community, other synagogues in the area, because obviously this particular area is very heavily Jewish and a lot of synagogues and so forth. I can't speak to the cybersecurity issue other than to get somebody to assess your systems. I know in LA we have an organization that works with the Jewish community, and I don't know, you may have one here that assesses your security issues and so forth, and may be able to talk to the synagogue about that. For the average person in the membership, the best thing to do is keep your eyes open, report anything that you see online, because that could lead to something later. And we have a reporting feature on our site. It's an email called ireport@wiesenthal.com. There are other places, report things to the platforms. Every platform has a reporting feature, because we need to know, because we put it in our reports like you see here, but the platforms need to know that you see a problem here. In terms of the cybersecurity issue, I think that the synagogue has to talk to the local organization that deals with that.
And I'll do a quick plug. I've been to the Museum of Tolerance in LA, also the Mobile Museum, which goes around all over our area as well. It's an incredibly powerful and useful thing. And we partner with the Holocaust Museum, obviously, which is also very useful in trying to combat hate, especially with school groups going through. Can you describe, Rick, how you find anti-Semitism is related to the other forms of hate and bigotry that you see?
It's very interesting because most extremist groups, white supremacists, neo-Nazis, they obviously dislike everybody. They don't like LGBTQ people. They don't like Asians. They don't like African Americans. But in their mind, even long before they brought up this concept of the Great Replacement, it was always the Jews behind it all. Either it was the Jews' idea, it was the Jews that were orchestrating it, that were leading these other movements and so forth. So in most cases, it's always about anti-Semitism. If you scratch deep enough, you'll find that the Jews are targeted. Now, I will tell you that extremist groups, and Jeff Scoop is our friend, is a perfect example of this. He was very good at taking whatever came his way. So when the talk about immigration and so forth ramped up, then they made that a big part of their movement. In another community, where one community many years ago in Iowa, I think, decided that they were going to make their city more multicultural and wanted to bring in like 100 African American families to this community. Well, the local Klan and people and other extremists jumped on it right away. They're very flexible. They know how to pivot and go for whatever issue is in the news and so forth. But most of the time, it's the Jews that are behind it. They'll even put out charts how they all mesh together and they deal with each other and so forth. And most of the time, it's complete bogus logic, but it sounds good to their followers.
So if we were to see something hateful online, Is it best to report it or to engage, or if reporting it, then to whom?
Okay. Absolutely, there is no point engaging because that's exactly what they want. Over the years, especially with things like Holocaust denial, they want nothing better than to have people talking about it so they can get out their ready-made talking points and things like that. It's the same things with extremists and anti and everything. There's no point in engaging because all you do is give them a forum. Every worthwhile platform such as Facebook and Instagram and YouTube and others have a reporting feature somewhere on their site. Some are better than others in dealing with that material. I would ask you to send it to ireport@wiesenthal.com because we have a relationship with many of these. We are special flaggers with a lot of the platforms. And again, we use this to see that we need to see the material so that when we have our face-to-face meetings with these platforms, we can show them, well, there's this, there's this, there's this. But also we can get the material removed in many cases. Engage with a platform, engage with us, do not engage with the haters. It's just not, it's not worth it, and it will only make you want to pull your hair out after a while, because the truth is that most of them are very good at what they do.
I can give you a personal example of this, and I admit that I am 63 years old, but I still play video games on occasion. And I was playing a World War II game. I always play as the American Army, by the way. And I noticed a group that I was playing. You play people from all over the world. And I saw a group, the title of their group was Zyklon B, which is the gas that was used in the Holocaust to kill people in Auschwitz and all of the extermination camps. And then the names were all like Hitler's favorite or things like that. So I contacted the platform and I said, you need to get rid of those names because it's incredibly offensive. And they say we don't edit those kinds of things. And I wrote back and said, well, I don't play your game anymore. So that's one thing I think you can do. I mean, it hurts them in the pocketbook. Last time we did this presentation, Amazon was still selling swastika necklaces. Those kinds of things, there are ways that we can address those as well.
Yeah, absolutely. The best thing to do with some of those things like Amazon or some of the others is to shine a light on them. And that they do not want the spotlight. And unfortunately, the merchandising part of it, not just with Amazon, but other sites around the world, is a big part of our release this year because we found so much of this stuff on other platforms as well. And unfortunately, in some parts of the world, they do not get whatsoever how offensive that, Nazi memorabilia and so forth. In Asia, some young people like to dress up as Nazis and have Nazi weddings and things like that. They just don't get it. But yeah, it's like you said, the Zyklon B thing. You told that story before, and it's you have to let the platforms know how offended you are.
So do you know why so many of these white supremacists have military backgrounds? And I kind of wonder sometimes, do they become white supremacists because they've been in the military, or do they go into the military because they started out as white supremacists? Do you have a thought on that?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. The military, for the most part, is not a training ground for white supremacists. They actually got very serious about it back in the 90s and put a lot of regulations into their not only the DOD regulations, but each one of the services put in things because, for example, one of the former white supremacists, the first skinhead to get out of the movement that we had back in the 90s, was a Marine, and he had Nazi flag in his locker and used to distribute material and so forth. And they met with us to talk specifically about that and what went on and tried to eliminate it. I'm sure there's somebody that's radicalized. One of the things that some years ago that they were telling their people is go into the military, get the training that they offer so that you can get the best military training in the world, get all that, and then if you want, you don't want to be in the service or you want to get out, do something that'll get you kicked out. But they were actually telling people to go get the training. In many cases, some of the peripheral philosophy and things like that may be maybe taught in the military, or not taught by the military, but picked up in the military. But for the most part, they aren't particularly strong recruiting grounds as such.
So you showed the information, the digital information that you're trying to get out to schools, and we can partner on that here in the 14th District. But what can parents specifically do to try to prevent their kids from being exposed to this type of information?
Yeah, that's very difficult because kids know their way, how to get around their parents in many cases, unfortunately. And they develop, if they really want to, and it's not just with the type of material we deal with, but it's anything offensive. If they want to put stuff, most kids don't use Facebook because their parents and their grandparents use it. Most of them do use Instagram. And those that really have something they don't want to show their parents, they have what they call Finstagram, or a fake Instagram account. So they'll have one that their parents can see, and then they'll have one under some other name that their parents wouldn't even know it's them. Parents need to take a serious look at this, and if they get to high school or late middle school, it's too late. That's why one of the things that we did with our Combat Hate program, we have just instituted a 5th grade program of all things. Most of us here didn't think about crazy stuff in the 5th grade. We were worried about who we were sitting next to at lunch and who we were playing with at recess. But unfortunately today, most of these kids have phones and they're subject to this stuff. So parents need to take a serious look and have a talk with their kids at a relatively young age and try to keep track of what's going on their phones. Because unfortunately they have all, and it's a difficult prospect. I'm not even sure, I wouldn't want to be a parent of a young kid right now. I mean, it's just, I know what's out there, and it's difficult, but, and it's more than just it's more than just their internet usage. It's how they're raised in general, and that's, parents have to take it seriously because it's a crazy world out there, and all these influences are coming at them, which means that we need to have more parents forums so we can tell them things like this so they know what's out there.
And that is another goal of United Against Hate, to try and focus on ways we can get out to our libraries and to our schools to do more outreach for those types of things. But even my son, who's 20 years old and a junior in college, he will tell me about things he read on TikTok. And these are more like anti-vax type things, Robert Kennedy Jr. stuff. And I will, address those with him and say, look, you need a more deep dive on this. And I try to do it as a conversation, not as a pronouncement. That I hope that helps, but that's certainly something that I'm still dealing with somebody who's certainly past his adolescence.
And I will say, if you can put together any parents forums, like, over Zoom, we are happy to participate and do a presentation for half hour, 45 minutes, talking about these issues so they know. Parents need to know what they're up against.
And my experience as a public figure serves as any guide. When I was a school board member, I got more input from people than I've ever gotten as a trustee or a Cook County Commissioner, because people care so much about their kids and they want to do everything they can for them. I think that we are to the point where we have all of our questions are taken care of. So first off, again, thank you to Rick and the Simon Wiesenthal Center for a very interesting discussion today. I'm sure you came away, I hope, not too overly disturbed, but also understanding that there are people working against this, including this organization and including all of you. And I think that's incredibly important to keep in the forefront of our minds. Please go on to www.cookcountyunitedagainst.hate.com, take the pledge, sign up for the newsletter. It is something that I think is worthwhile, in ways that you can try to expand on things you can do yourself to address these issues. If you have an organization that would like to partner, we also would be happy to respond to that and to help you with that. We'll also give you one of these very fancy window clings whenever appropriate, if you can partner with us. And again, I do believe that throughout this process, and I'll give you one quick example, one of my law school classmates ended up becoming a priest and started a group in Arlington Heights called Children of Abraham, which is a group of Jewish Christian and Muslim young people who get together and go to their houses of worship and learn about each other. Those are the kinds of things I've discovered, and I had not talked to him in 38 years last time I saw him at graduation, but I also knew that is something that we can talk about in the positive, because there's so many groups like that, and there's dozens and dozens that are trying to do the right thing to establish that we are stronger together and that hate has no home here in Cook County. And I thank you all for being here, and again, Allison and Rick for their tremendous partnership. So thank you again.
Thank you.